Danzo Shimura, a man of great skill and even greater intelligence. During Hiruzen's time as Hokage, Danzo acted as the leader of the Anbu, working in the shadows to protect the village they both loved. But, at some point, their paths drastically diverged. Hiruzen was soft, as Danzo often put it. He couldn't do what had to be done. Danzo believed he could, and so he did. Many things happened in and outside the village walls that only he knew about. Rarely did they blow up in his face. Fortunately, his latest deal didn't. If it had, he was unsure if it could have been fixed. Danzo awoke from his medically induced slumber, feeling a new sense of power. He glanced at the masked medics around him before standing. "How long until I can use it?" he asked. "A year at most, sir," one of his men replied. Danzo nodded. "What happened during the riot outside the hospital?" "There was no riot, sir." Danzo's eyes narrowed. "None?" The bodyguard nodded. The Jinchuriki and his peers made an appearance. He diffused the situation before leaving. The village's hatred is still strong, however. They appear apprehensive about doing anything to the boy. Danzo shook his head in disappointment. He had hoped for the leaked information to cause a greater storm. Not enough to break the boy, just to push him. Though, it seemed there was little need. "I must pay Tsunade a visit," he said, his guards vanishing into the shadows. A few minutes later, he was outside the Hokage tower. Everyone inside bowed as he walked past. All except two. The first was Shizune, who sat at the desk outside the Hokage office. The second was Kakashi as he exited the office, a blank expression on his face. It wasn't until he closed the door behind him he realized why the Jonin dismissed him. So, Tobi had to use Koto Amatsu Kame on Kakashi. Either the copy ninja was winning their fight, or he simply learned too much. The shinobi I had following him didn't witness the battle, only Kakashi leaving. The man looked up as Tsunade turned in her chair. They were silent for a moment, before Tsunade sighed deeply. "What are you here for?" the fifth Hokage asked. "I heard of the commotion at the hospital." She scoffed. "You're doing, I bet." "I trust you will be putting the appropriate resources into capturing Sasuke Uchiha." Tsunade frowned. "I already have teams of both Anbu and Jonin searching across our allied lands for any sign of Orochimaru. At this point, Sasuke will only be a byproduct. You plan to sit idly by and allow Orochimaru to obtain power of the Uchiha clan? Power that belongs to the Hidden Leaf?" Tsunade stared coldly. "Sasuke isn't an object. He's merely lost his way, as many do." Danzo stepped forward. "Then at the very least, declare him a rogue. If he refuses to return, we have no choice but to eliminate him." Danzo didn't find himself fearful for his life often. The last person to make him feel this way was Hiruzen in his prime. Hiruzen was considered a shinobi on par with Hashirama during those days. Perhaps that was why the first Hokage's granddaughter was the one to make him sweat. Tsunade's ki was something else. It was as if her medical training was channeling it to attack Danzo's very core. He knew Tsunade could see him shake, and that only made his fear rise. "If you even think about killing Sasuke Uchiha, I'll make sure you live to regret it," the fifth said in a hollow voice. "You would allow the Jinchuriki to manipulate this decision?" Danzo forced out, immediately regretting his choice of words. "I don't need to explain myself to the likes of you. Get out of my sight. Now." Danzo took less than a second to weigh his options, deciding it was best to not add fuel to the fire. "One more thing, Danzo," Tsunade added, her ki slowly receding. "If your Anbu from Root come near this office again, they shall be detained on sight. Killed if they resist." Danzo couldn't form a response as Tsunade returned to her paperwork. He swiftly left the tower. His men had been found out. That was bad. Knowledge of his personal foundation, Root, had existed since Kakashi joined them for a brief stint, but no proof was ever found. Danzo made sure of that. Clearly, things had changed. Naruto's Forest Haven, 1 week later. Haku sat in uncomfortable silence, watching as Naruto slowly flexed his muscles. His legs had finished healing, and his arms weren't far behind. At the moment, he could barely mold enough chakra to create a shadow clone. Haku kept insisting he should wait for a full recovery before training. The blonde refused, saying this was the perfect time to go back to his basics. Since becoming a genin, he had focused on learning ninjutsu. Now he had a chance to improve the base of his power, his elemental affinities and their limitless uses, even in small amounts. There was a silver lining, Haku admitted. For the last week, the two had done nothing but talk. They did so mainly in hushed whispers, Naruto constantly expecting something to jump out of the bushes. Although he'd quelled the crowd at the hospital, he knew their hatred wasn't going to vanish that quickly. Even so, Haku felt better than ever over the last week. She wouldn't admit it, but the last few months had been difficult. Yes, she did enjoy being in Zabuza's company once more, and the mist was a nice place to live now that it was close to being fully repaired. But something about this clearing, the waterfall, the silence, being with Naruto, nothing could replace this. "Damn it," Naruto cursed, hands falling to his side. Embers floated to the ground. Naruto forced his arm back up, channeling as little chakra as possible. Another flame sprang into existence. After a moment, Naruto raised his other arm, a small orb of electricity appearing at the tip of his fingers. Slowly, he brought the two closer, allowing the lightning to hop to his other hand. After another minute of concentration, the blue bolts began to fly around the fire. Out of nowhere, both the flames and the lightning burst out of existence. "What was that?" Haku asked. "Something I don't think will work," Naruto muttered. "I'm trying to merge fire and lightning chakra to create a new element. Either I'm doing it wrong, or it's simply not possible." "Perhaps you should focus on a different element. Magnet style, perhaps. You said you haven't used it since the fight against the One-Tails." Naruto eventually nodded in agreement, rummaging through his cave. He pulled out a pouch filled with sand. He had been sent on a mission near the Land of Wind weeks ago and managed to obtain it for later use. Haku watched him pour the sand out and begin to focus. A part of her regretted enabling him, largely because she just wanted to talk. As she watched him train, she wanted nothing more than to just sit by his side, all day and night. "And here I thought you were seriously injured." Both Naruto and Haku jumped at the voice, turning to see Danzo standing amongst the trees. His figure was somehow more off-putting in the light. Naruto couldn't explain why, but he felt differently from their last encounter. It was also at this moment Naruto realized he was powerless. His body was still healing, and he could barely use chakra. "What do you want?" Haku asked, instinctively stepping in front of Naruto. "I simply came to check on your condition. I heard you had quite the confrontation at the hospital a week ago," Danzo answered blankly. "Don't toy with me," Haku warned. "I guarantee you're the one who's behind it." Danzo didn't answer. There was no need. Naruto frowned. You want something, otherwise you wouldn't have done it. I see you're not easy to convince. Very well, I'll talk. Sasuke Uchiha is a traitor to this village. He must be dealt with. Trust me, I will take care of him, Naruto answered, gaze firm. Danzo wasn't convinced. Now that he's with Orochimaru, he is a threat. One that must be eliminated before he becomes too powerful. You've encountered Itachi Uchiha, haven't you? He killed an entire clan. Simply imagine how strong Sasuke shall be with help from a former Sannin. Trust me, I will take care of him, Naruto repeated. Danzo's frown increased. I never took you for the bright sort. Even with your elemental affinities, you won't stand a chance against a grown Uchiha. And since you refused to use the Nine Tails, there was only one way you may come out of your next fight, the victor. Haku tensed. And what would that be? Danzo stared past the Yuki, directly at the blonde. Become my student. If you do so, I can teach you things no other shinobi could fathom. Danzo sensed the flux of ki from both young ninja. He didn't expect the idea to be a fond one to them, but at this point, his options were beginning to decrease. He had stayed away from the Nine Tails because of Hiruzen and now Tsunade. But if Jiraiya was planning to take him outside the village as he predicted, he only had this moment to try and convince him. Your sensei, Kakashi. He worked under me for a few years. During those days, do you want to know how many of his 1,000 jutsu he learned through my training? Almost 300, and another 200 were copied during his various missions. While you may not possess a Sharingan, your affinity for the elements is something I can draw the full potential out of. Naruto didn't say a word, but he couldn't deny that Danzo's words remained in his head, instead of going out the other ear. Danzo could tell his words were still present in the boy's mind. He pressed forward. My unique class of Anbu have obtained information on every Kekkei Genkai known to mankind. You can master every element at a rate even Shadow Clone training barely compares to. Above all, I could show you techniques on the Forbidden Scroll. I already know the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. That's enough for me, Naruto replied. Danzo noticed the boy tense further. He was getting closer. The Flying Raijin Jutsu. Naruto's eyes widened, memories resurfacing from the night of his academy graduation. Mizuki, the roof, Hiruzen, and the technique he displayed. He sent Mizuki away in the blink of an eye. Afterwards, he kept asking questions about the technique. He knew it was made by the second Hokage, and mastered by the fourth. That was before he learned the truth of his parents. The Flying Raijin required an expert level of seal mastery, however, which he had little affinity for. Even so, the power of instant teleportation was a useful power indeed. Danzo closed his eyes, forcing on the thinnest of smiles. Believe me, Jinchuriki, I had nothing but respect towards your parents. I would be honored to help you attain heights even they couldn't reach. All you must do is put your trust in my teachings. I promise you, you will become a powerful shinobi, perhaps even greater than all the previous Kage. His eyes opened once more to see the shimmer of interest, replaced with something he couldn't describe. Even Haku found herself stepping back from the density of the aura surrounding Naruto. It was more than a contained fury. Danzo expected the Nine Tails to be influencing the boy if it ever came to a situation like this. But the fox's chakra was nowhere in sight. The seal on his stomach wasn't even active, the tailed beast still dormant. You called me a Jinchuriki. I hate to admit it, but for a second, I actually considered taking your offer, Danzo, Naruto said through gritted teeth. But you're no different from the people of this village. You just hide it better. You see me only as a tool, a Jinchuriki for you to mold into a killing machine. But there is one difference between you and the villagers. Danzo would have fallen to his knees if his decades of experience hadn't kept him upright. The contained aura suddenly expanded, the forest shaking around them. Naruto stared directly at Danzo, blue eyes piercing the man's soul in a way he didn't think possible. Naruto showcased his fangs as he snarled. The difference between you and the civilians is that I have no problem with hurting you. Killing intent had been used as intimidation since the dawn of shinobi. It was cultivated through a person's trials as a ninja. Every death they witnessed or committed themselves made their hunger increase. By extension, their ki. But Danzo knew for a fact that even though he'd been on dozens of missions, Naruto had never once taken a life. And yet, as the forest swayed from the wisps of blue energy, there was no mistake. This was worse than ki. 2 hours later. Naruto awakened a while later, Haku gently stroking his hair. Seconds after Danzo hastily left, Naruto collapsed in pain. He unintentionally used too much chakra, causing him to pass out. He looked up at Haku, her eyes shaking in both worry and a hint of fear. He opened his mouth, but Haku stopped him. Don't apologize. You did what you had to. Danzo deserves far worse, and we both know it. Naruto looked away, mind racing. In truth, he didn't know what had come over him. All he knew was that he felt something, and then everything that followed was a blur. Did I hurt you at all? He asked the Yuki. Haku shook her head. You just startled me. And Danzo too, it would seem. Naruto nodded, sitting upright slowly. His body ached. His recovery was bound to be pushed back by this. Both him and Haku looked up as a toad jumped through the clearing. A small scroll was on its back. A message from Jiraiya. The sage had been gone since the Sasuke retrieval mission. Naruto had a feeling he knew what the message was about. I got word of your injuries. Tsunade said you should be healed in 2 weeks. I'll return shortly before that, then we'll be leaving for your training. I suggest you get everything prepared. From Jiraiya the Gallant. Naruto let out a deep sigh, Haku looking over the scroll as well. Looks like your training trip is set in stone. The blonde nodded. Pervy Sage is right. I have a lot of things to take care of before then. Hyuga Compound, 2 weeks later. 8 trigrams, 64 palms! 2 Hyuga danced through the courtyard of the main house compound. Hinata was on the offensive, Neji on defense. Both had recovered only a few days ago, and they were already back to training. Neji noticed that Hinata was both stronger and faster than before. There was a time when he would never accept it, but he knew Hinata was slowly catching up to him in skill. Their training was cut abruptly as a pair of Hyuga ran towards the compound gates. They turned to see Hiyashi, watching as they opened the gate slowly. Hinata had come to understand the look in her father's eyes. This was one of hatred. There's only one person I know that makes my father have those eyes, Hinata says sadly, Neji catching on. Against Hiyashi's orders, the two walked towards the now open gate. Naruto stood outside. As the Hyuga guard stopped in front of him, He seemed small. "Guards, please leave. Naruto's not a threat," Hinata insisted. "We have orders," the adults replied, glancing at Hiyashi behind them. Neji stepped between them. "Brothers and sisters, please do as Hinata asks. If anything happens, I shall take the fall." The guards were members of the branch house. Among them, Neji was a sign of change, a shinobi that could grow to rival the main house. Recently, they had been apprehensive since Neji had gotten closer to Hinata. But when they looked into the eyes of the cousins, they realized there was no need. The guards nodded, backing away from Naruto. Hinata bowed in thanks, much to the annoyance of her father, who walked off angrily. "Sorry about that," Naruto whispered, hesitantly stepping past the gates. "It is we who should apologize," Neji replied. Naruto shook his head. "The Hyuga have every reason to fear me." "But that doesn't make it right," Hinata protested. Naruto couldn't help but smile. "I'll only be here a minute anyway. I just wanted to say thank you before I leave." "You're leaving?" Hinata asked shakily. "For a training trip, yes. I don't know when I'll be back, but it may be as long as 3 years, maybe more." Hinata was unable to look into his eyes, the blonde shaking Neji's hand. "I wish you luck. If you ever require aid, don't hesitate to ask," the Hyuga stated. Naruto smiled, Neji cracking one of his own. Naruto then turned to Hinata, the girl's face bright red. The blonde reached out his hand once more, Hinata staring at it for a moment. Before anyone knew what was happening, Hinata flung her arms around Naruto. The blonde gently hugged her back, Neji watching with a slight smirk. They said their final goodbyes, Naruto walking out of the compound, now looking taller than ever. Yamanaka Flower Shop. "Are you sure it's alright for me to have these?" Ino asked in a whisper. Naruto nodded, handing Ino the bouquet of flowers. They were bright orange, a spiral of yellow going across each of the petals. Naruto had found them barely growing in the forest near his haven and began cultivating them himself. "I've searched the entire forest and have never found any flowers like this," the Yamanaka said in awe. Naruto shrugged. "Well, I have more growing near my forest haven. While I'm gone, feel free to go out for more. But if you do decide to sell them, I suggest you keep my name out of it." Ino smiled at the blonde. Both had changed a lot since the academy. Back then, she used to dislike him, like everyone else. Now, she couldn't imagine not having him as a friend. As Naruto silently exited the flower shop, Ino's mother came from the back door. Her eyes widened at the sight of Naruto's gift to Ino. "What are these beautiful things?" she asked her daughter. Ino's smile widened. "I think I'll call them Uzumaki Sunshines." Inuzuka Training Field. Kiba and Naruto stared off against each other, several dogs of various sizes running around them, Akamaru joining the fun. They hadn't spoken since the retrieval mission, Kiba unable to look the blonde in the eye. "Do you hate me, Kiba?" Kiba growled. "No." Naruto smiled. "That's all I really needed to hear. Thank you." "Wait!" Kiba shouted, Naruto pausing. "You need to promise me one thing. When you get back from training, you and I need to have a duel. I refuse to remain weak." Naruto gave a thin smile. "Okay, I promise." Kiba nodded, swiftly turning away as Naruto left. Training Ground 11. Partial Expansion Jutsu! Rock Lee and Tenten evaded Choji's swipes and punches. Shikamaru watched from the side, already exhausted from the past 2 hours. Shino stood beside him, his insects flying in and out of the trees behind them. "I take it you don't plan on training much?" Naruto asked as he appeared beside the Nora. "Oh, I'll train. Just not as much as that beast Rock Lee," Shikamaru sighed. Naruto chuckled. "I'm sure everyone will be a lot stronger. I'm looking forward to see how everyone has improved." Shikamaru yawned. "You'll leave us in the dust soon enough." "You give me too much credit," Naruto frowned. "I couldn't even beat Sasuke." "Didn't you listen to Sakura?" Shino chimed in. "You're not alone. We will all become stronger. Next time you must face Sasuke, you shall not do it alone." "Yeah, what he said," Shikamaru muttered, looking up at the clouds. Naruto smiled, looking up at the clouds as well. A moment of rest before he began his journey. Hidden Leaf Hospital. Naruto stayed in the shadows, looking for Sakura and Karin. He wanted to see them one last time before leaving. He couldn't shake the feeling she blamed him for Sasuke not returning, no matter how much he denied it. Deep down, he knew it was just self-deprecation. Finally, he came to the training room Tsunade had set up for upcoming nurses. Sakura and Karin were the only ones inside. Karin and Sakura's shadow clone were deep into various books and scrolls. The real Sakura was practicing her techniques on a deceased fish, apparently a common creature used in that kind of training. She was sweating profusely. Naruto knew how little chakra she had, meaning she had gone far past her limit. After a moment, she fell to one knee, Naruto about to run over and help her up, but before he could move, Sakura took in a deep breath, standing up on her own. Her body shook from exhaustion. Even so, she weaved more hand signs, eyes focused solely on her training. She was taking it as serious as Naruto was, perhaps even more. Naruto caught Karin's eye, his cousin waving and smiling goodbye. He looked away, smiling. He didn't want to disturb them, silently exiting the hospital. Hidden Leaf Village, North Gates. Jiraiya watched in silence as Gaara, Haku, and Naruto walked towards him. Kankuro and Temari were waiting for him, the Sand siblings returning home after him and Naruto departed. Haku was set to leave as well, much to her disappointment. As they grouped up, Naruto was silent as he waved goodbye to Temari and Kankuro. Gaara shook his hand, the two sharing a look only they understood the meaning of. Naruto felt his stomach churn as Gaara and lingering chakra from the One-Tails vanished into the distance. His injuries had fully healed, and with them came the Nine-Tails. Fortunately, the fox remained silent. Finally, he turned to Haku, both unable to look each other in the eye. "Send me a letter when you're returning. I'll make sure to be the first person to greet you," Haku whispered. Naruto chuckled. "I will. And tell the hidden mists that I'll keep a lookout for both Yagura and the Six-Tails Jinchuriki." Haku nodded, finally looking into Naruto's eyes. They were as blue as ever, his cheeks beginning to turn pink. He looked away before the tears came, Haku leaning closer. Her lips pressed against his cheek, making them turn bright red. "Thank you," she whispered. Naruto merely nodded in embarrassment, following Jiraiya as he exited the village. "Looks like she's pretty serious," the sage laughed once they were out of hearing range. Naruto didn't respond, looking back to the fading leaf village. Haku was gone, already on the path to the mist. He had to look ahead now. He had a lot of promises to keep, a lot of training to do. He wouldn't stop until his body broke down, and even then, he would keep training. No going back. Not now. I must get stronger. Bring Sasuke back. I may have my friends to help me, but still, only I can stop him. That's the only way he'll come back. The only way I'll be able to stop him. Alone. Jiraiya knew what the Uzumaki was thinking. The boy simply couldn't get it through his head that he didn't have to hide in seclusion any longer. But in a way, Jiraiya understood why. At one point, he also thought that only he could bring back a certain friend, before realizing it was impossible. Perhaps that was why he was taking Naruto on his trip, not only to make him stronger, but to make him see how lonesome seclusion truly was. If you like what you just heard, consider hitting the subscribe button and bell icon to get notified about new videos. If there's a part you've missed, then check out the entire playlist on screen. If you like this story, please share it with your fellow anime lovers. Any support helps a lot. That's all for now. This is Ninja Kai, disappearing in a golden flash.